So very warm welcome to our guests who are arriving, James. They're flocking in now. This is really good. We tend to find there's a sort of big rush, don't we, Andrew, towards the...
Yeah, normally as soon as we hit the midday hour, we get a rush in. Yeah, where are we up to at the moment? About 20, aren't we? So we've got about a third of those that we're expecting.
It's not even midday yet.
No, it's a minute to go. That's really impressive.
I think most people forget that it's a bank holiday on Monday. Technically, isn't it?
No, it's not been forgotten by me, John. I've looked at the weather forecast and it's spectacularly good. So we've got our sunbeds ready in the garden. And I've got my shirt on again today for your delight and delectation.
That's good.
It's become a tradition now on a Friday to wear a loud shirt.
For a quiet person.
Yes, goes against the grain.
Yeah, we've had our sun lounges out for the last few weeks. It's been absolutely lovely on certain days.
Yeah, no, so have we. But I say we've allocated Monday, cleared the diary. No webinars, no family quizzes, etc., etc.
Day of rest, ideal.
So we've got 25, and where are we now? 12 o'clock. Should we give it another couple of minutes, gents? Are we happy with 2 more minutes?
Yeah.
Before we kick in? We are expecting around 50 or 60, aren't we?
We certainly had good registrations at 70.
Yeah, good.
So.
I'm going to have to shut my window. My wife's got the lawnmower going.
That's what I like to see, a woman with tasks.
Well, do you know, in 40 years of marriage, I've never mowed the lawn.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or not. It's
30 now, probably.
Odd. Yeah, we're halfway there, aren't we? What do you think? Should we kick in?
I think so. I think we should get going. Yeah, we're recording it so people who missed the beginning can pick up.
Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest in our run of webinars. Many of you know that these started pre-Easter. We were working on behalf of Constructing Excellence Southwest, Constructing Excellence Midlands, and the Structural Timber Association. We've combined forces post-Easter and are now running them each Tuesday and each Friday at midday. And we've been joined by Constructing Excellence Wales and the Housing Forum as we try and bring you a little bit of coronavirus information and now a little bit more. So first of all, as I always do, I'd like to thank Howard and John for organising and facilitating these webinars, which I think we all agree now is the way forward. And particularly, I'd like to thank James today for coming on as our guest speaker. Really looking forward to what we're going to be talking about today, post-Covid-19. I think it's particularly relevant today that we're looking for that because the construction industry recovery plan was due out yesterday. I haven't seen it yet. I did input several meetings to what it might look like, so I'm interested to see the end result. I didn't see it come out yesterday. Hopefully it might come out today. So James, really looking forward to the next hour with you. Just before I introduce you, we've got a really busy week next week. As you know, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. So with that in mind, we've teamed up and we're sponsoring Mates in Mind on Bank Holiday Monday. My son Tom is a singer and he's agreed to do a concert in aid of Mates in Mind, both to raise funds and, more importantly, to raise awareness. So if you're interested on Monday night at 7 o'clock, go to my son's Facebook page, Tom Carpenter Official, and you can see that. Also next week, we've got two great speakers. We've got a communications expert on Tuesday, Penny Wood, and then we've got Andrew Dewar coming back on Friday. In between times, Howard, who's here organising today's webinar, is hosting one of our theme group meetings on Tuesday afternoon around health and well-being. And we have a speaker from Mates in Mind who's going to be giving a presentation. So lots to look forward to on the CE front next week if you are so interested. I'll talk a little bit more about those events towards the end of the hour, but right now, James, without further ado, post-Covid-19, we're all ears. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. So by way of a very quick introduction before I disappear behind my presentation, my name is James Hinchcliffe. I'm on the board of directors at JVP Associates, and we are a strategic communications consultancy. I'll say a little bit more about JVP and myself in a second, but in terms of the general purpose of today, I want to attune people's brains to the value of strategic communications. I'm not going to say that I've got all of the answers about a potential communications approach for you, nor am I going to throw a flurry of sexy statistics about how important digital is or anything like that. This presentation is based upon ideas. It's based upon sort of our company's experience and also my experience sort of as well. In terms of sort of format, if I put a few polls sort of in the presentation, and also a slot for some questions as well, sort of at the end of part one. So I am going to disappear behind a presentation, which is just as well, because everybody tells me I've got a great face for radio. Now, can everybody see that? Right, hopefully people can see that now. So just as way as a short sort of introduction, JVP has got 35 years plus experience in the strategic communications sector. So we are based in Bristol, and we were born in Bristol 35 years ago, and we've grown to have offices nationwide, including sort of in London, Westminster, in Warwick, and also Manchester. Our operations are based around three core disciplines of media relations and PR, stakeholder engagement and public affairs, and we've got a very wide range of clients. And I provided a very small taster of those clients across the built environment, property and economic development sector, which are either sort of past or present. In terms of myself, I've got over 20 years of experience in communications and politics and such like, and instead of sort of a dull corporate photograph, I thought I'd put a photograph of me and the things which are important to me in my sort of personal life. There's my wife of 5 years and also my little boy, who's become an increasingly frequent participator sort of in conference calls sort of over the last 2 months. In terms of my general experience, I started my career with the Conservative Party in Bath and North East Somerset back in 2002, and then moved to work for the Council's communications team in 2008, where we dealt with a whole range of issues in that comms team related to the built environment, including the core strategy and sort of building some quite significant major projects throughout the district. I then did 1 year sort of at NHS England in a communications management role, and then moved to JVP. In terms of my sort of academic background, so I'm a Chartered Institute of Public Relations accredited practitioner, and also an increasing expectation of our clients is that we've got knowledge of leadership and change management. So I've just completed a postgraduate certificate in management and change at the University of West of England, Bristol Business School. So in terms of the overall aims of the presentation, what I'd like to do today is give you a slither of insight from the world of strategic communications and cover three particular areas. The first, COVID-19, state of play. I think it's always important that your strategic communications council, whether they're in-house or agency, provide some observations and keep you abreast of the external environment, whether that's on a political basis, in social media, or the press. So I'll do a little bit of that in a second. Also, the second part, I think, is about understanding how you can seize the moment. A lot of companies that we deal with are currently in the process of resetting their whole organisation. Well, how can you do that and reboot your strategic communications approach? And then we'll go from concept of seizing the moment to an actual suggested model and an example about how you can move from PR promotion to genuine two-way engagement. So just to kick things off, I'm an optimistic kind of guy, so I was hoping that I could all get your opinions on a scale of 1 to 5 about how optimistic you are about the prospects for the construction industry over the next 12 months. So 1 the lowest, 5 the highest. So just wait for those results to come in.
I think that's good, James. I think we've got about 86% of the congregation have voted. So that's really good.
Terrific, terrific. Have we got the scores?
Do you want me to share those?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we'll share the results.
Oh, so a variation between 2 and 4. So it seems 24 of you percent 2, not very optimistic. 39% 3, midway, and 32% sort of 4. As ever, so a very close split sort of between different sources of optimism. But let me try and encourage a bit more optimism, so that if we did this at the end, you'd be more towards sort of 4 and 5. And absolutely, if I just let me just wait for my presentation to catch up with me. Sorry, my screen has just seized for a moment.
You might just want to stop sharing and then reshare, perhaps, James. It might be just the poll. Does that?
Right. Right, we're back up and running. So let's increase that sense of optimism. So yes, absolutely, it was a difficult start to the quarter for the construction industry, and yes, so the Times gave sort of ample coverage sort of about various purchasing managers indexes. So you can see the article on the left, construction industry sort of in a whole, but I think that there's all sorts of reasons for the sector to feel optimistic. The first was sort of politically based, so you can see Robert Jenrick, Secretary of State responsible for housing, in the top right hand corner, and he gave immediate impetus for local councils to continue with their local plans and to encourage them to continue their planning committee sort of meetings so that the planning system did not become gummed up. The second part to be optimistic about is the Economist commentariat. David Smith, excellent writer. Try and catch up with him if you can in sort of the Sunday Times. And he was very clear last Sunday that the government's infrastructure programme is unlikely to be scrapped, which obviously is very positive for the construction industry if he is right. And then third, sort of at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the LinkedIn Workforce Confidence Index for April 2020. And top of the tree was the construction industry. You are the most confident, apparently, in the prospects for the construction industry compared to a range of others around healthcare, manufacturing, software, and IT services. So even though some people were towards the less optimistic scale in our poll, the workforce is overall sort of top of the tree in terms of that confidence index. So let's take an assumption that there is going to be sort of upturn in sort of fortunes. There is the opportunity to be more sort of optimistic. Let's try and build upon that optimism. And as I said at the start of the presentation, there is the opportunity to seize the moment for organisations to rethink their operations. Are they doing the right things? Are they saying the right things? And it's an opportunity also to reset your communication strategy. We're talking about with clients about that reset of the communication strategy, but I can bet my bottom dollar that in terms of the range of issues and the range of departments that organisations will be considering a review of at the moment, I put a tick alongside a lot of them there. I put a sort of a question mark alongside strategic communications, because a lot of our clients come to us at a point where they've considered all of those other departments to reset and to reboot, but they haven't thought about strategic communications. So this for me is an opportunity for senior leaders and boards across the country to think, what can we do to reset our strategic communications so it is fit for purpose for the future in a post-COVID-19 world. So building upon that sort of optimism and resetting that your businesses, my view is that it's the glue that binds that reset together is engaging with your audiences, whether those are internal or external, ensuring that you get those messages right about your present, about sort of your future, making sure that your strategic communications capability is absolutely right for the evolved normal. And communication has a really major role to play in how companies come out of the other side of the COVID-19 crisis. And what I've put down here is a series of stages, a series of checkpoints, a checklist, which is by no means exhaustive, but it's the sort of issues which senior leaders and communications teams might want to start thinking about at this point. So in terms of stage one and restarting sort of the business, which is broadly sort of where we are sort of now. So our advice is be proactive, communicate the current state of the business to your stakeholders. For all of your stakeholders that you have, not all of them sort of will be as absolutely sort of critical in relation to your sort of activities, but provide them with reassurance that the heart is still beating in your business and you are continuously planning to ensure that you come out of the other end of COVID-19 as sort of ready to get back into the game. The second part is employee engagement and interaction. Tune in to how your colleagues sort of are feeling. Consider how to communicate how they are going to be reintegrating into sort of their positions following either being furloughed or even non-furloughed staff. And also make sure that you're keeping communications open with your partners and your supply chain. Catch up and update with them. Collaboration has never been so important in the construction sector and across other industries as it has been as of today, as we all support ourselves to get back and up and running for the post-COVID-19 world. So just moving beyond that restart in the immediate sort of stage, we've got sort of a reimagine stage. So I watched a webinar from the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors as of the other day, who talked about the 21st century watershed moment for the construction industry being COVID-19. There is likely to be an acceleration of change in the construction industry towards themes such as manufacturing then assemble rather than manufacture then build. A new emphasis on robotics, on modular building, a greater emphasis on achieving the government's targets of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And that watershed moment almost requires quite a sophisticated, quite a thoughtful response to the way in which organisations communicate to their stakeholders. So the starting point of that reimagination for companies and the sector as a whole is that stakeholder analysis of your customers, your industry influencers, your partners, your suppliers and the media. Really interrogate who has the power, who has the interest in your industry, who you should be communicating with. Transformation and change is inevitable at this point. So how can you involve your staff in those two-way discussions about the future and in your company story? When you read change management theory, change is more effective when the people who it affects are involved in the progression of that change. So maximise that involvement, maximise that engagement. Don't just leave the process to the top table in the business. I've also put down 3 factors as part of this tick here, which is digital communication, digital communication, digital communication. It's absolutely critical that companies and organisations, they look once more at how they are communicating digitally. And just because there were certain methods and tools that were relevant 2 or 3 years ago, it doesn't mean that they're relevant today for the post-COVID-19 world. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a second. So once you've reimagined what your business looks like in the post-COVID world, then comes the exciting bit, the stage 3, the reboot, and communicating your reimagined business to your stakeholders and how that your reimagined, how your changed business will benefit them. And you can do that by placing a framework at front and center of your wider business strategy to communicate your achievements, to communicate how you're meeting those challenges against your new look business plan. Evaluate the positive reputational impacts and try and learn from them to inform continuous improvement for your communications. Communications is only as effective as the buy-in from senior leaders in an organisation and how they have a meeting of minds with people who are on the coalface of day-to-day work. So try and take efforts during that reboot to humanise your brand. Get people communicating for whom their day job is a passion for them, rather than reserving the presentation of the business to the most senior people in an organisation. So if you've gone through those that three-stage process in resetting your communications capability for that evolved normal, I hope that a range of different words will have been used in that language of rejuvenation of the business. Clarity, consistency, inclusivity, empathy, and transparency. And if you're using those words within the context of setting your strategic communication strategy, then I don't think that you'll be going too far wrong. So I did mention that 3 key aspects of the Reimagine phase were digital communication, and I thought it was probably worth its own slide. Because part of a strategic communicator's brief is about leading that digital technology revolution, about opening the eyes of senior leaders and all people within the business about the opportunities that digital technology has in terms of realizing the objectives of your business. And 3 of the key things which we're currently talking about with our clients are website, video platforms, and virtual events. So in terms of website, this is an opportunity for you to reset your approach to winning the visibility battle. I'm sure that any company or organisation, when they type in their name, a whole host of other organisations come up at the same time. Your objective is to win that visibility battle. Keywords become those battlefield weapons to hit the search engine results pages, and a renewed focus on what those keywords are could be part of that resetting strategy. Don't necessarily think that you have to do all of that yourself. Mobilize some professional help to yield data-driven insights to maximize your search and content performance. The next part is video platforms, and Zoom does an excellent job, but there is more to video conferencing platforms than Zoom. And JBP are having a range of discussions with other video conferencing providers, which you've probably never heard of. Those ones which are seizing the moment, seizing the day to implement their platform for a range of purposes. And the sorts of purposes which we're seeing in the marketplace are things like branded video conferencing. So your own company brand can be sort of all over whatever you're presenting. The ability to host your own TV news bulletin, a bit like a Sky News recorded, so with a presenter and a series of sort of commentators from in your organisation, and also industry influencers talking about the things which matter sort of in your sector. And we're also seeing different types sort of functionality as well. So introducing external media, ticker content along the bottom of the screen, visual sentiment of applause symbols and other such things, and trying to bridge that gap really, because sort of as humans, we love human contact, we love social interaction, and there are a lot of video platform providers out there trying to discover sort of how to bridge that gap between humans and technology. And the final element of the digital package is really virtual events. Social distancing has reduced the normality of public exhibition conditions. Virtual event software, trust us, it's always been out there, but now it becomes a product of its time. But there are opportunities to use those video platforms for virtual events, for internal conferences and events. So instead of asking your suppliers to come halfway across the country sort of for a face-to-face sort of event, so on a quarterly basis, there's real return on investment opportunities to say to those people, let's use video technology and let's save some money for reinvestment in our wider service. So that provides a bit of an overview of how you might want to seize the moment, look at the factors which reset your communications in the post-COVID-19 world. Very pleased to hear any thoughts or discussions from the floor. And I've got a few questions here which I will pick up. So I'm going to start from the bottom. How do you differentiate your company's communication message so it's seen through inevitable snowstorm of digital that returnees to the industry will be faced with? Well, there is a strategic process to ensure that you can differentiate your message, and that is around sort of what at JBP we call a discovery workshop. Let's sit down let's sit down senior leaders in an organisation with people who are on the cold face of your day-to-day activities and start to understand what your unique selling point is as a business. What exactly do you have to sort of contribute in terms of data, research, thought leadership and insight into the challenges which face sort of the sector, and then start to turn that into sort of a piece of communication which is helpful to the wider industry to ensure that you can cut through that snowstorm of digital information, honing that message around stuff which isn't promoting you as an organisation, but is starting conversations about sort of issues of industry challenge, like, for example, the move to modular. What insight, what research, what intelligence do you have sort of on that, which could be different from other parts of the market? And I'll talk about that sort of in a few moments. So absolutely. So there are no there are no new ideas in the world. So the Construction Leadership Council's recovery plan calls things restart, reset, and reinvent. I think that our sort of spin on that is ever so slightly different, but the principles remain absolutely the same. So yeah, if there's no sort of other questions or comments from the floor.
We have some questions come in, James, on the Q&A. I don't know, I can read them out or I can try and bring some people in. We have an anonymous one, so I'll have to read that one out. But if I was to open a couple of things in a minute, let's start with this question. I'm not supportive of search engine optimization of your website or keyword chasing, as I don't think it drives demand in-house building or commercial contracting. What is the alternative to SEO they've put?
So I think that there's two ways in which you can drive sort of traffic to your website. One is a largely technological and search engine optimization solution. The other is about ensuring that your website is rich with content which people find engaging and interesting. And once you've got that engaging and interesting content, which you know fulfills sort of which piques the interest of people in your sector, you're then at a point where you can sort of cross-promote that content which is on your website through other communication channels. And I'll come on to a suggested model for that sort of in a moment. So if you don't believe in the keywords sort of agenda and the search engine optimization agenda, that's fine, but there's more than one way to skin a cat, and we'll come on to that sort of in a few slides' time.
Okay, I've opened up for Steve Anderson-Dixon. I've opened you up, so if you want to open your microphone, you will be able to ask your question. If you want to open up your camera, everyone will be able to see you. So over to you, Steve.
Thank you. James, I just wondered, what are other developer clients telling you about what they predict for post-COVID-19? It would just be interesting to know what other clients are actually telling you. Thank you.
In terms of the development world, so I think that the clients are split into two. When you talk to people who are responsible for strategic land, and planning consultants in particular are responsible for strategic land developments, on the whole, because of the timescale, they are optimistic sort of about the future. So they work in sort of years which are 10, 15, 20 years sort of ahead, and they see this as a temporary hiatus before councils have to refocus on delivering ambitious housing targets sort of up and down the country. I think when it comes to the physical sort of building of houses, so I think it really is going to be sort of QED. It is to be proved sort of how quickly the market sort of takes off. I think sort of one of the key factors is that there are about 300,000 sort of people currently in a chain for sort of house purchases. It'll be interesting to see how those chains proceed, because some of that intelligence and data, I think, will start to inform sort of what house builders start to do in terms of issues like land banking, for example, and how quickly they progress on building their developments. If there's any sort of house builders on the line, I'd be delighted to hear sort of what they sort of think about that. But that's my interpretation from the people who I've been talking to anyway.
Thank you.
You had another question, Steve. Do you want to ask that whilst you're there about furloughing?
Yeah, the other question I just wanted to ask James was in relation to furloughed staff, and from your perspective as a communications organisation, what do you think is the right degree of continuing engagement with people who are furloughed, but obviously wanting to keep them involved in the organisation for a future point, but appreciating the fact that they can't actually do any work. Well, they can't at the moment. And so it would just be interesting to know what your thoughts are in terms of continuing to engage with furloughed staff.
So the broad advice which we've been providing clients is sort of keeping sort of furloughed staff sort of engaged in firstly the direction of travel for the business during the post-COVID-19 world. Second is about keeping them engaged in those actions and activities which the business is taking sort of in order to ensure that when furlough sort of finishes, that there is a clear future sort of for the business. Broadly, though that is the sort of advice which we've sort of been providing, although obviously sort of the scripts are far more detailed, far more complex than that. The one thing that we've been suggesting to clients not to do is if there are any sort of informal conference calls that sort of held or any discussions held, that those sort of employees are not sort of told by sort of others within the business sort of how busy they are sort of on a day-to-day basis. Sort of how sort of hectic it is sort of at the organisation sort of is sort of at the moment, because that has got the impact, the psychological impact of those people thinking, perhaps the business is doing sort of very well without me, when in fact that's not the case sort of at all. So it's a very managed message which we've been advising clients to give staff. Yes, keep them up to date with the direction of the business and what is being done to ensure that sort of resetting of the business takes place in the post-COVID-19 world. But at the same time, make sure that information is at the right level for those people. That is what they're going to be interested in. Is there going to be sort of is there going to be a role for me when I come back to work sort of post-COVID-19 world?
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, in the current sort of government view, do you want a comeback question? Are you happy?
No, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay. Next person, I've got a question from Julia. Julia is able to also open her microphone if she wishes, her camera, and to ask directly her question to James. So over to you, Julia. Thanks.
Hi, thanks very much. Yeah, I've just been thinking about the fact that the construction industry is typically a little bit behind on technology compared to other industries, and how you see us as an industry going forward to be able to implement those new methods of communication and to be that sort of advanced, if you like, very, very quickly in such a short timescale.
I think there's two main routes that sort of organisations can take. So the first is sort of engaging sort of expertise from outside of their organisation through either a digital or sort of a public relations sort of agency who have got a track record of experience and knowledge in the field. And that doesn't necessarily mean that organisation, that consultancy doing the work. It might be that the scope of that consultancy's work is an audit of your current technology and recommendations coming from that audit sort of about what your business can do sort of in the future. The flip side of that is that you need to build internal sort of capability, strategic capability at the same time for the post-digital world. So that includes investing in training for in-house communication staff, investing in training for staff for whom communications isn't sort of their day job. Because I think that sort of businesses pay a very high regard to training for issues such as sort of HR, performance development, procurement. But I think that historically, strategic communications has always been the Cinderella element of people's sort of training and their personal development plans. I think the part of my argument in this presentation is that should be taken as being being the Cinderella element to being absolutely critical, given my view that so communications is the glue which binds all of those other different services and the way in which you project yourself into your marketplaces.
Okay, Judy, are you happy with that? Any comeback? Further question or?
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. James, do you want to continue with your second part?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, over to you.
So, am I still sharing? Yeah. So we've gone through a little bit of a conceptual design of the reboot process, but what could that actually mean in reality? One of the things which we suggest to clients is that they should use strategic communications to launch conversations in their marketplaces. So I'd like to suggest a new approach, or it might be not a new approach, to connecting with your audiences. And the question that we always pose to clients when we embark upon this journey is, what if instead of being amazing, you focus on being helpful? What if you decided to inform rather than just promote? And ultimately, what that means is that we want our clients to generate a greater understanding, awareness, and two-way conversation with people in their marketplaces about the challenges and solutions facing their relevant sector, and obviously in this case, the construction sector. And that concept is based upon what is an American term. It's called utility. So utility is a concept so where you might say to a client, is this material so good that you would pay for it? Is this information, is this thought leadership so good that you'd pay for it? Obviously, they wouldn't pay for it, but hypothetically, is it good enough to meet that test? Does it have enough value? And that's how you start to engage your audiences sort of above that digital clutter, which Andrew said on the chat a little bit earlier. So just a few examples from the professional services landscape. So on the left-hand side is Burgess Salmon, sort of who did a Perspectives on Infrastructure series, where they weren't the commentators in this case. They facilitated a discussion about views about infrastructure from industry leaders and key decision makers. On the right-hand side, you can see Cushman & Wakefield, a bit more of a contemporary example about recovery readiness. So that's where they have provided a series of thought leadership pieces about how the property sector should become ready for the post-COVID-19 sort of recovery, with thought leadership of high value, which they don't charge for. But on the other hand, when you read it, you think, yeah, I'd probably pay for this. So the key idea, I won't go through sort of it all on the right-hand side because I think I've sort of trotted through sort of the key aspects. But what we want to do is to support clients sort of in line with the principle of being helpful, with the concept being a precursor to a wider commercial conversation. So you move from a topic-based conversation about your industry to one about how can we help you meet this challenge. So as a way of doing that, I'd just be interested to know in a snap poll, have you written a thought leadership white paper, report or guide on a topic of interest for your company? And it's a simple yes or no answer. I'd be very interested to know.
Numbers are crunching. How are we doing, John?
Yeah, so we've got 74% have voted.
Okay, let's put it up. Let's put it up and have a look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so 38% of you have, 60% of you haven't. So this will be a journey of discovery for some of you. For others, it might unlock for you the value of why communicators think thought leadership is so important. So I've got this slight issue again with the poll interrupting my screen. So in terms of sort of thought leadership, it is a great conversation starter. And we do a lot of working with clients to use thought leadership to kickstart sort of an organisational reboot, to show the level of change that their organisation has gone through and present that change effectively to the market. And how that sort of process works, I put into a flow chart sort of here. So quite simply, we take the challenges for the construction sector. So examples of those would, for example, being in the construction sector, 25% of existing construction workers are set to retire in the next 10 years, big challenge for the sector. And also the move to MMC and modular homes, another challenge. And at that point, so an agency, doesn't have to be JBP, can engage with the selected company staff members to explore those construction issues and challenges. And we develop thought leadership around certain content pillars, which are based around company, sort of industry data, statistics, or original research, company observation, sort of an insight, third-party contribution, so people from outside of your organisation, or best practice, use your own services as a case study. And don't worry, we wouldn't leave sort of any client on their own to write that thought leadership up. We draft content in an interesting and engaging way based upon those different content pillars which address the challenges for the construction sector. And the outcome of that is a white paper, guide or report by the company team ready for rollout and engagement across your media channels, and we're able to target your audiences in an effective way. So the exciting bit, and this is where so my point comes in about an alternative to search engine optimization and keywords to drive content to your website. So taking the reimagination that we talked about earlier of your target stakeholder list, this can inform the most effective methods of reaching your different audiences. And we use that stakeholder analysis to take the white paper, guide or report, and then put that through a series of different communication channels, which have all got an element of two-way engagement. So your organisation talking to your marketplace and your marketplace being able to talk back. And I've thrown some suggestions sort of in here about how you might do that. Again, it's not particularly exhaustive, but you can obviously upload it to your website. So the content could be promoted to your key stakeholders via LinkedIn social media marketing. You can have blog posts in response to that white paper from third-party contributors who respond to that thought leadership. And those could be your partners, your suppliers, maybe even your potential customers. And you could even convert that into video. So you won't have just written word on your website, but also video of that person as well being interviewed. You can also convert the white paper into a video itself. Thought leadership turned into those TV bulletins that I talked about sort of a little bit earlier, with influencer interviews, partners, sort of company experts, really bringing that white paper to life. Another suggestion, webinars. Maybe you could do a webinar with a strategic partner like Construction Excellence Southwest on the subjects which are raised in the thought leadership to widen that participation and discussion, potentially amongst a lot of the people who are probably on this video conference right now. White papers can also enhance your press and media capability with more sophisticated content for trade forward features. But you can also consider strategic media partnerships, approaching publications like Construction News to say, we've got a thought leadership series here. How would you like to do a series of inserts with us in the centre pages of your publication to make your publication more engaging and pick up more readers as a result? So there's a win-win there between sort of the publication and also your organisation as well. And naturally, white papers, guides and reports, they can enhance your own organic social media. So the posts that you put up day to day to your existing audiences. The stronger channel presence opens up that opportunity for conversation and discussion with your stakeholders and the wider marketplace. And just for variety, you could also adopt a podcast in order to supplement that organic social media with something that people can listen to. So you can see from that we've got a full communications mix, which is all born out of a single piece of thought leadership, engaging with your stakeholders, which are important to you, engaging with your future customers, engaging also with your staff and with these methods sort of as well. So just some concluding thoughts. I hope I've given a reasonable flow through sort of the optimism which I think is granted in the construction sector. The way in which I think the construction sector should seize the moment, and as well as reviewing sort of all of the obvious operations, you can start to review your strategic communications as well. There's a model for doing that, the sort of the reboot model, the three-stage model I went through earlier. And at the end, we've gone through a few ideas about how you can make that reboot model come alive through the lens of thought leadership, to start to pierce through that sort of message clutter, which was raised earlier sort of on the chat. So my 3 points for concluded thoughts is that COVID-19 is a watershed moment, not just for the construction industry, but also for strategic communications and the way in which you use those communications to deliver your business objectives. You can harness the emerging optimism of the construction sector by putting strategic communications front and center of your evolved normal approach. So strategic comms isn't just something that helps you deliver your business objectives for the next 6 months or to a year. Embed it in your business processes from now and play the infinite game using your comms tools to raise above the crowd. And I trust you, the dividends will be great if you place trust in that strategic communications approach in the evolved normal. Thank you very much. And if you're interested to know more, JVP do have a reboot program, sort of all around the themes which I've just discussed. So there it is on the screen, jvp.co.uk/reboot. Sign up to our boot camps today. And if you do want to talk to me a bit more about PR and political communications, those are my contact details on the screen as well. And I'm sure Andrew will circulate the presentation. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Do we have anyone who has any questions? We've got 5 or 6 minutes left. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, I'll very happily bring you in. And James, I'm sure, would be very happy to answer any questions that people have. So if anyone's got a question, please raise your hand. I found it extremely interesting.
Howard, you've brought me back into play.
I have.
Yeah, I too found that brilliant, James. Would you mind maybe unsharing your presentation? Yeah. So we can also, I was the person that mentioned the Construction Leadership Council recovery plan, simply because I've been involved in several meetings virtually that sort of inputted the information, so to speak. What we found over the last 8 weeks is that the government, who were obviously the co-chairs of the Leadership Council, have asked the construction industry to communicate with them through the Construction Leadership Council. And I have to say that in my 40 years in construction, this is the most joined up I've ever seen us in terms of how we're communicating. So my hope is that the whole of the construction industry buys into the recovery plan as laid out by the Construction Leadership Council, and that we use the same language. Otherwise, I think we're going to be in fear of doing what we normally do and all going off doing our own thing, which is slightly different. And so my hope is that we can get a joined up approach, almost identical to what you were espousing. But as I say, it is sort of restart, reset, reinvent. With regard to the reinvention, I think what is interesting is a lot of what you talked about is in there. So transformation, looking at modern technologies is front and center. So digital and off-site, but also a green agenda, zero carbon, a huge emphasis on the planning system changing, a huge emphasis on retrofit, but also a huge emphasis on how we procure, value, modern commercial contracts, and also partnerships. So that plays right into the CE agenda of collaboration. But yeah, no, a lot of, you know, brilliant presentation, James, and, you know, really, really helpful. So I appreciate that. I don't want to hog it because I know there's a couple of things come up on your chat that you might want to just answer, because we've only got about 5 or 6 minutes left.
Yeah, I've opened Carol Halligan's. She's got a question, so I've opened a microphone. Carol, I've opened your. So just open that yourself, and you can speak away.
Hi James, great presentation. Do you think that those businesses that don't engage and embrace digital will be left behind now?
I think the straightforward answer to that is yes. I think that there has been a sort of a trend that has been taking place over the last 10 to 15 years about the way in which audiences consume their information, and the way in which they consume sort of their knowledge sort of about sort of industries, and that there has been a significant shift sort of away from consuming publications, paper-based publications, and towards consuming sort of content which is online, either through a sort of a combination of websites, or it might be a combination sort of owned media. So when I say websites, I mean publication titles in the trade sector. But I think increasingly owned media of companies and organisations is going to be increasingly important as they differentiate themselves sort of from the market. The trend sort of over the last 10, 15 years has been away from paper-based publications and towards digital and towards sort of social media. So I think in the communications world, we are starting to win that argument now with senior leaders in organisations that they have to invest in their digital technology. They have to invest in social media marketing. Because the occasional post, for example, sort of on LinkedIn, sort of is not sufficient these days. LinkedIn is absolutely swamped with all sorts of different content from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of my connections. The content which comes up most often in my feed now is content which is paid for sort of by sort of an organisation for me to see it as a sponsored post. And LinkedIn is quite clever. So that they don't splash all over it the fact that it's advertising and social media marketing, but those posts which come up most often in your feed most likely are those sponsored posts. That's where my point about the thought leadership sort of comes sort of in, is that you can do some great thought leadership, like I said at the end of my presentation, but if you're not piercing through that sort of clutter of updates and posts on LinkedIn, for example, by using social media marketing, your message might be going sort of astray. So I think absolutely companies and organisations have got to think differently about the way in which they engage their audiences digitally. And the post-COVID-19 world is the ideal time to do that, especially now that there is a new technology on the horizon, which is going to become more commonplace. And that's the one that we're on now.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been great. I've been doing some stuff with students, and we've been engaging sort of 30 students through work experience on digital. And I can see that's the way it's going to be going. I think for all kind of work experience and for our industry, it's great because we can't actually get youngsters there. But I think the bigger picture is we've struggled for years with attracting young people. Now us embracing digital is going to leapfrog us into their area, and maybe we can really start bringing, you know, this new pipeline of talent in.
Yes, yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I think particularly in the area of design as well. So some of the industry leaders which JVP talks to, So they're really, really enthused about young people's approach to design. Yes, planning and the engineering side of construction is interesting to them, but they're really passionate about design and how to ensure that what the industry constructs so is fit for purpose for the 21st century, not just in terms of aesthetics, but other things as well, such as ensuring that developments are zero carbon, for example, and meeting that 50% sort of target. And the more that the industry can do to bring young people to the fold, so the better. I quoted that statistic sort of a little bit earlier about the sheer volume of people in the construction industry who are due to retire in the next 10 years. There's a huge challenge there. It's a thought leadership topic in itself about how to engage younger people sort of in the topic of construction, not just from sort of university 21 sort of onwards, but can we go a bit further beyond that? Can you start to sort of engage people at A levels, level, sort of in the way in which they can use subjects like maths, for example, to then apply further down the road in industries like construction? It's a really exciting sort of challenge, a really exciting topic. And you're absolutely right, communication has got a big part to play in sort of unlocking that challenge.
Yeah.
James, thank you so much, and thank you for the question, Carol. I'm going to wrap things up now, ladies and gentlemen, because we've only got a minute to go. So first of all, I would like to thank you, James, a splendid hour. I'm sure we found it hugely interesting and valuable. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. It really is
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Hope to see you again. Thank you, Howard and John, for facilitating once again. And just a reminder for those on the call, you'll be pleased to know that thought leadership is actually at the heart of what we do within the Structural Timber Association and within Constructing Excellence. So lots of thought leadership is available from us to you. Next week, we've got a very full week after the bank holiday. We've got Working in Reverse Friday, a week today. Andrew Dewar is coming back from WSP, talking about great projects needing great teams. And then on a Tuesday next week, we have a double bill. In the morning, we have a webinar with Penny Wood, who's going to be talking about communication in the new world. And Howard is going to be hosting a theme group meeting in the afternoon, our Health and Wellbeing theme group meeting, where we have a speaker from Mates in Mind, Stephen Haynes. So that's a very good Tuesday. And then Monday evening, I mentioned it earlier, we've teamed up with Mates in Mind to put on an online concert, which my son is performing to raise money and raise awareness for the charity. And that's at 7 o'clock on Monday, bank holiday. You go to Tom Carpenter official Facebook site to sign in. So I think that's probably enough. Enjoy the afternoon, finish your work, and then have a damn good weekend. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. James, just before you go, would you mind sending me a PDF of your presentation? Because we've recorded it, we'll post it up there so people can go and look at it again or refer to colleagues to it.
Yeah, I will, I'll do that right now.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you ever so much.
No, I hope it went fine. I think it went very well.
Thanks.
Okay, have a great weekend.
It's a slightly new experience for me, so sorry if it came over a bit disjointed.
No, it's not easy, and I mean, I wasn't aware that the poll would interfere with your screen share, but that's something we'll have a look at. It hasn't in the past, but obviously we'll check up. Yeah.
I mean, hopefully I sort of powered on through as best as I could to look at that.
You did well. No, that's fine. Okay, so have a great weekend. See you again.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot.